Welcome to the You Don't Know What You Don't Know podcast by Innovative Business Advisors. Successful business owners who have started, grown, and led businesses share their journey and direction for the benefit of those traveling the same path.
So today we're with Elizabeth Ledoux and Andrea Carpenter. They are the transition guides with the Transition Strategists out of Denver, Colorado. And the Transition Strategists is a premier transition strategy company that guides their clients to creating the ideal strategy that is unique to their individual clients' requirements and desires, delivering a transition that everybody can be very proud of. And ladies, welcome. And I'd like to say that it's fascinating because here we are with a real live example of what you guys do. So Elizabeth, Andrea is your chosen successor, and you put in the work to really develop a transition plan that works out, ideally designed for you and your company. So love to have you ladies talk more about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having us. It's such a pleasure to be here. And, it's interesting. I think there are many business owners out there who have teams, their business team is thinking, what happens if something happens to you? What happens if something happens to the owner? And that happened to me. My team we were doing fine. And this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And we did a nice SWOT analysis like you do when you're doing your strategy work. And my team, one of the top threats that they saw in our company was me as a sole owner and kind of the leader in the business. So anyway, they put it on my list of stuff to do to figure out what my transition plan was going to be. And that was kind of interesting because I was like, we do this all the time. I've been doing this for years, but reflecting back and having to do my own was good for me. So walked through that process and came up with some strategy that I thought would be great. And I had the opportunity to talk to my husband and learn some things about his ideas and what he saw too, which I had no idea. If I hadn't have done it, I would never have understood what his perspective was. But we were able to bring those two together. And then about 1.5 years after I finished it, I was kind of on my merry way and, had this idea of what my succession would be like. And I ended up at a meeting and met Andrea's dad, who said, "Hey, would you talk to my daughter? And she's going to build us a consulting company." And I said, "Well, sure, I'd be happy to." And when we got together, I think because I knew what I was looking for and I actually had a strategy, I was almost immediately able to invite her into some conversations because I was ready. And had I not have been ready, I think I would have been afraid and maybe not even recognized what a great fit Andrea would be as my successor. So anyway, I'll let her tell her side of the story, but it was pretty cool how my journey went on this.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, Steve, for having us. Basically, everything that Elizabeth said so far is the truth. That kind of matches up. I come in a little bit later in that timeline. I had left my full-time job, thought I wanted to start doing some consulting or coaching. I was just trying to figure out what's the space. I knew growing up with a dad who started a business, had a very successful exit, that I wanted to work with next gens and successors in families like this. And so I knew that was my passion. I was just trying to figure out what the lane was. And so I met with Elizabeth and I started sharing ideas with her. And I think it was that moment of she was like, "Well, hey, I already kind of have something like this." And I appreciated the structure then. So I can look back on it now and I'm like, oh yeah, there was definitely a structure that was followed in terms of like, how do I even evaluate if this could be something worth exploring more? So we went through a tool called the IMAP, which is basically a multi construct like personality assessment. So what is Elizabeth's role in the business and what am I? She's a little bit more of a creative visionary. I tend to sit a little bit more on a refiner integrator type role. And so therefore automatically off the bat it was like, oh hey, we actually have some really complementary skills. And she walked me through that and showed me like, hey, if you did your own business, these might be things you would struggle with. Would you agree with that? And I saw that and I saw the possibility kind of in the business. And so I was open to these discussions and ultimately it led to let's explore what it would look like to go into business together. We went through a tool that we call the objectives matrix, which is really just digging into what's the why. So Elizabeth had already done hers. What does she want to get out of life in the business? And she had me do the same just to make sure that it was that coming into this business was actually going to align with where I wanted to go in life. And when we had open conversations like that, and I was able to look at everything laid out, I'm like, oh, yeah, this does actually really align with what I'm trying to go, what I'm trying to build, the type of impact I want to have on the world. And so discussions became a little bit more serious. And so, from a successor perspective, it also helped me feel like communication was open and there and that I could bring things up. We could talk more openly about what the future would look like. And I don't know how you feel, Elizabeth, but I feel like it's a little bit of our vision. Like I recognize and I totally respect the legacy and everything that's been built before, but I do feel like, hey, this is really cool. This is now something we get to go build together as we move forward. And this is kind of the ideal scenario for a business as an owner thinks about leaving and handing that off to the next person. You need someone like me. You need that successor, whether it's your kids or just someone who is working in your business or someone that you're inviting in to feel like it's just as much their vision and their excitement and what's right for their life so that everyone can kind of move forward feeling excited.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I would say that that's so true, Andrea. And it we have a couple of different workshops that we put together, but one of them is called Metamorphosis. And it is a metamorphosis that an owner goes through to have your vision and have it become our vision and then have it become right Andrea's vision. So my vision becomes our vision, becomes Andrea's, and we're intentionally working on that. That's a part of our strategy because, I've got 3 or 4 years to get that done. And right now, I'm glad it feels like it's our strategy because that's what we're working on. It's
Awesome.
great.
How did the team take this?
Andrea, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting being someone coming in, right? Because you don't want to just be like, oh, I'm here. And now, like, I've kind of stepped into this leadership position. So it was definitely some time of getting to know everyone, seeing what they felt excited about, building relationships before we kind of move forward. Really, just if this is going to be eventually a team that I'm helping lead, like, are these people I want to work with? And we have a really great culture. We have really great people. So that was a very, very easy transition to me from that perspective. I'm curious, Elizabeth, from yours, what you were seeing.
Yeah, no, so in our work, what how we do this is we view transitions as a journey and not an event, because there are many events that happen along the journey to make a transition go well. Usually transitions are pretty chaotic if they are an event. It's very difficult. So um, we we started our journey by Andrea coming in and basically being a consultant. It was great because she could test out the waters and see if she liked the team and liked me and liked what we were doing and thought the tools were good. And, she could check everything out. And I could do the same. I could not have an employee, not have anybody I had to fire. So we came up with a really good plan that met her needs where she was and met our needs where we were. And so we did that probably, excuse me, probably for about, oh gosh, 9 months or so, maybe a year. So it took a little while, and but all along, we were having these other conversations about her coming in. So I think the team, the way we put that together, you became a part of our team externally, but then internally. And I could watch her performance from a business perspective, and we could see how we worked together. And that was step one for us because we didn't know each other at the time. Like, she's not my daughter, right? Which could be a benefit. You never know. But yeah, family transitions add an extra layer of complexity. But it was just great for us to have that opportunity. So now we're at the point of navigating the purchase and going forward over the next years. And ultimately, if everything goes well for her and for me, right, for you, then she'll want to be majority owner and we'll make that transaction, and then she'll be on her way. But we've got a long time to be able to get a lot of learning, and I have a lot of learning to do leaving, and she has a lot of learning to do coming in. So there's learning on both sides and for the team.
Yeah, and it sounds like if you execute this well, right, it's going to have nothing but a positive impact on the business. And Elizabeth, you and I have been around the block a time or two, and we see a lot of car crashes happen, right? We see a lot of relationships that are broken up over a period of time, and a lot of businesses damaged, and sometimes irreparably damaged if it's not done well.
Yeah, I'd say more often than not, Steve.
Yeah,
More often than not.
unfortunately, and that's what the studies say as well, right? You read about owners that transition out. Most of them are unhappy, 1 to 5 years afterwards.
That is so true. Yep.
Yeah.
Because Andrea mentioned the objectives matrix, and that work is so important for someone to do, because if you have something that you really want to do and you've got a vision of what that looks like, even though there's some unknowns in the middle because you're not sure, but if you have any kind of vision and you start to navigate that and test it out yourself as you are leaving the company and your successors coming in, you typically should end up, yes, having some sadness leaving, but also having some big joy moving on to something else in your life, because people are living longer these days and they're healthy and active. So, why not go do something different and new?
Yeah, and what we've seen in our limited experience is that business owners that do successful transitions are much happier, 1, 3, and 5 years out, because their baby's growing up and maturing and developing this very successful life outside of the nest, if you will. And there's a huge amount of satisfaction that owners that transition well actually receive.
Yeah. And a lot of it, some of it's financial, but I'd say a large portion of it is emotional, and just emotional well-being, and happy with the result and happy with people moving forward without them.
The emotional definitely outlives the financial. That's our experience anyway. So
yeah,
I love the tools that you guys bring to bear, and I love the fact that you started this yourself. And not only did you create these tools, you're living them now. You're living them firsthand, right? So you've been working with owners for several years, Elizabeth, developing a lot of these tools, and now you've got this wonderful fresh perspective coming in, and you guys are using the tools and probably iterating on the tools and improving the tools. Speak a little bit more about the tools that you bring to the process as you work with your clients over this very sensitive process.
Yeah, thanks. Andrea, do you want to answer that first, or do you want me to go?
Oh, why don't you talk about just kind of what the transition process looks like, and then I can share a little bit about a tool to get started.
Okay, good. So over the years, these have been developed over the last 25 years plus. And each step of the way we do, make them better and improve them and refine them. So we've got a very comprehensive process. People can come in at different stages depending on where they are in the process, but we start with it's kind of like, any map program that you have on your phone. We start with everybody understanding where are they currently, what do they have, because you think you know what you have, but people have different perspectives. And so what one person sees that you quote unquote have, another, or the position that you're in, another person might see a different perception. So we start with this thing called the current profile, where we do the IMAP that Andrea talked about for everybody who's included. And we really understand, gosh, from, financial performance, insurance, we talk about estates, we talk about all different kinds of things, trying to get a picture put together that everybody can see where are we starting from. So we have our current location. And then going back to that map program, you have to have some kind of a direction. You don't have to have a pinpoint destination. Like, this is where I want to be in 10 years. But you have to know your direction. That really helps. It saves a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of heartache, helps with communication. So we help them walk through this thing called our transition compass. And our transition compass, we walk through the why that Andrea talked about. We walk through what do you have and what do you want to transition. We walk through the many whens, like when do I want to let go of a job or a task that I'm doing? When do I want to no longer be in the business? When do I want to transition some of my equity? When do I want to transition the rest? And maybe with different kids, we really work a lot with families. So with different kids and ages, how do I bring in one, right? When one might be 6 years younger, and how do I figure that one out, and wait or not wait? All those different questions. So we talk about the who, and then we also talk about the how and how much. So we're very people oriented. We were talking earlier that it doesn't matter what the strategy is if the people don't want to do it and it's not going to meet their needs. They are going to not do it, or they're going to get upset about it, or they're going to rebel against it. And we see it all the time. We end up with families who are not communicating, not talking to each other, really in a poor position. So yeah, the how and the how much, those two things are in the compass, and we work through those. So we get an idea of how they want to do it, and how much they need. Back to the financial piece of how much do I need to retire? Can the business cash flow this? Like, all those different questions. And after we get done with the compass, we've got the current profile, we've got the direction, the compass. Then we choose the route, because we know we know what direction we're going. And so we help the owner and their successors choose the route, and the route, that's their roadmap. So we help them build a transition roadmap with a timeline, and the timelines can go anywhere from 2 years to, we've done over 15, because you find an owner or a founder whose family is in the business, and they just they're loving being with their kids. They want to stay until they're no longer on the planet. So we just go 15 or 20 years out, and that's the plan. Yeah, so that's kind of there are a lot of tools inside of that. Afterwards, we help with governance and structuring that so that people first, just a variety of different things to help them on their journey.
Excellent. Andrea, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just say something that we see a lot of owners getting ready to think about transition, especially when there's other people that you're bringing along with you. It's like, okay, how do I even start this conversation? What's that first step? How do I bring it up? I don't want to promise something to someone that we're not going to go with. So how do I begin that conversation? So we have a resource. It's called the How to Have the Talk guide. It's basically a word for word script to help people who are prepping for a conversation. So it's learn when to have the conversation and when to hold off, how to break the ice, what types of topics you might want to bring up in that initial conversation. And you can just download that. So we'll put that up at letstalktransition.com/IBA. And I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes for them to click as well.
We'll put that in the notes. Yep.
Yeah,
So that'll be easy.
perfect. So yeah, you can download that really just to leave to have those right words to talk with people about what's next. I think that's super important, and it helps the business owner feel better about a path forward, and it also helps, and I can say this having lived the experience as a successor, like let's just set good expectations and open a conversation to really start a collaborative path forward as you think about what your transition might look like. So we'd love to share that with you if that's interesting.
Yeah, I think our audience will find that quite interesting. It's a great way to start off on the right foot, right?
Mhm.
What
And
what are
can I
go
add
ahead,
one
Elizabeth.
thing? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so incredibly important as an owner or a parent that owns a business to have this conversation. So many times, I just want to say that the owners or the founders are taking all of the weight on themselves and feel like they're going to make all the decisions for their successors. And, your successors are adults typically. They're sometimes 40s, 30s, 40s, even 50 years old. So
Mhm.
this conversation that Andrea, that guide that you just mentioned, it is really powerful for people to use. So I just encourage you to go out there and just think about how to bring somebody else in a conversation. Don't carry it all yourself.
Yeah, couldn't agree more because the assumptions are what kill you, right? If you say assume means I'm making an ass out of you and me, right? And I can give you lots of examples of owners that assumed that their kids were going to step in, and when they finally had that talk, their kids said, thanks but no thanks, right? And unfortunately,
Yeah.
then they had to come see me, right? And we
Well,
had to,
or fortunately, but it burst their bubble when they thought it was,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and you always think we have an owner that we worked with, and we were doing some of the compass work, and we were doing the who, and he just looked at us, and he had 4 potential people to bring in, and he goes, what if none of them want it? But it had never
Mhm.
crossed his mind. It was, of course all 4 are going to want it. Of course everybody's going to want to come in. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. And
Mhm.
yeah, and so realizing that, and then he had the conversation, and a couple of them decided that they did not want it. So it's nice to know that up front, if you can figure that out. The talk is a good talk to have.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's one of the things we do with our clients when they come see us, because I always say we're their last resort. If they come see me, we're the last resort, because they've already thought through their organization and their family, and people have either told them no or they've thought for whatever reasons they're not a good fit. But we
Yeah.
we do a little bit of what you're talking about in terms of starting them back through. Okay, let's go through, your network, your people, etc., and let's talk about what are the successful traits that are going to be necessary for your successor. So not anywhere near the degree you guys do, but it's a key piece. What do you what do you think? What do your clients find most surprising when they begin this process that they didn't know before they started?
Hmm. I think from a successor next gen perspective,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you see your parents or the business owner being so successful, and then you get in the weeds and you're like, they're kind of just trying to figure this out too. So that like realization that someone you've looked up to for so much of your life is still just a human is definitely something that can be a little a little shocking for some successors because you build up this picture or this story in your mind that you have to be a certain way or you have to do this certain thing or you have to be exactly like them. And I think there's this fundamental truth that most people want you to be happy. They want you to be authentic to yourself. And that can be surprising for many successors. So that would be my answer for a successor.
Yeah. And yeah, as far as transitioners are concerned, I think one of the things that they find is that uh, I think that their assumptions or their perception of what they believe is possible or not possible is shifted dramatically, um, because they actually take deeper look at what the opportunity is and what some of the challenges are. Sometimes we build up the challenges being so big in our minds that there's just no way we can go that direction. It's just too hard. But when you really look at it, I think that they gain a big shift in their perception of what's possible, where the opportunity is, what the challenges are, and it really is freeing for them, because the weight is not all on their shoulders anymore. And they brought some people in, again, to Andrea's point, no promises, but at least they're hearing what's happening and who might want what and how they can then solve the problem, because they don't understand the problem when they walk in, but they clearly understand. When I say problem, I think of a math problem, right? We need to solve the right problem, but if you don't understand the components, you can't solve the right problem. You just solve whatever you think that it is. So that's the big shift for them.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that clearly. You guys really focus on relationships and communication. Do you find that a lot of times you have to really build that up in order to make the plan move forward? Or do you find that those are strong foundations that are already existing when you start?
It's interesting because I think you could say it depends.
Yeah.
I think what we've found is that people who care about others and have strong values in that area, and care deeply for the business, care deeply for their community, care deeply for their employees, their vendors, their customers, their family, and they're really trying to do a good job. That's the foundation. And then the relationships sit there. Usually they're solid or somewhat solid, but part of the reason why I think people come to us, some are very forward thinking, but a majority, I would say, are starting to feel some tension. They're starting to feel some of those relationships maybe slipping a little because the successor is excited and wants more, and they're not quite ready to leave because they're afraid and they're not ready to let go. And so this tension starts to build. And then if you're a family, it starts to show up at home, maybe with, the mother or father who's not in the business, and Christmas gets a little bit tension. Yeah, there's tension there. So I think the foundation is the values and the people first concept. And we love to come in when there's a little tension, but that people are still happy and communicating. We do come in when people are not talking to each other. And those are, just to give our listeners an idea, if you ignore your transition strategy and you let it get to where there is a lot of conflict inside of the relationships, that just adds to the time that it takes, because you have to start by repairing all those or include that in the strategy versus just saying, hey, we're all here together. Let's just talk about it, figure out a strategy and move forward. So it's so much easier to start and do it first instead of wait.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that clearly. The reason I asked the question is because I do see how many people are surprised, and it always amazes me. And I always tell the clients, Elizabeth, when people of our generation come in to see me, it's like, wait a minute, your team's already talking about this. So if they're not talking about it to you, I can tell you they're talking about it to somebody, probably in the break room, to others, right?
So true.
So it's fascinating that once that dialogue begins, it does begin to open up and things begin to be able to flow again, because there's that tension. You can sometimes even feel it when you go into the organizations. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and the team really can feel it. Yeah. I think it affects, you kind of think, oh, it's just between us. And I think it really affects the team because they can absolutely see it.
Yeah.
I was going to add, I think the right strategy helps build the relationships or solidify the relationships, make them even deeper. And Elizabeth, in my case, there was like a baseline relationship. Like we knew each other, but we were essentially building that relationship as we started talking, as the strategy was unfolding. And every discussion we had about any key point or detail or what's our price going to be? How do we want to structure this? What does that look like? It helps us understand each other more, which in turn helps build that trust, helps move that forward. So I think the process of going through creating a strategy helped solidify that relationship any even more because I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt respected by her, and that was a great jumping point too. So don't sleep on the power of that to help strengthen that relationship.
Yeah, what a keen insight that is. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much for that. All right, well, thank you very much for sharing the tool. I think that's going to be amazing to begin to start that whole conversation, and how prescient that was for you guys to bring that up. I haven't seen anybody else doing anything like that, so I think that'll be wonderful. Is there any other key pieces of wisdom or advice that you'd like to share with our audience before we give them all your contact information and let folks know how they can reach out to you directly if they'd like to talk about this further?
Well, I think in the work that I do, as you get to where you're transitioning out of your business and you become financially independent of the business, that's all wonderful and that's all good. When you get to that point, truly, I think the things that are of the biggest value in our lives are our relationships with family and friends and people, and also our health. So just, I think as you walk through this transition that you're looking at, don't underestimate the relationships, because when everything's all said and done, having those relationships intact is what's going to bring you joy once you're out of the business.
Andrea?
Yeah, I think for successors or for business owners, if you have a successor or are thinking about successors, just don't sleep on the power of just having a discussion, beginning that discussion with them, because they'll feel seen, they'll feel more heard, and they're going to show up better for you so that hopefully you don't feel so alone.
Well, the results are in. Over the thousands of years of human existence, we know conclusively that 100% of the business owners are going to leave their business either voluntarily or involuntarily at some point in time. And I think what you ladies are focused on is doing so in the best possible circumstance with the best possible outcome. So my hat's off to you. You're doing yeoman's work, and you're making a huge difference in families' lives, not only today, but into the present for the whole future of their family organization. So great stuff. How can people reach out to you guys and learn a little bit more about what you do and how to engage with you and move forward?
Yeah. So thanks again, Steve, for having us. That free resource about how to start the talk is letstalktransition.com/IBA for innovative business advisors. Otherwise, you can just reach out to Elizabeth or I through our website, which is transitionstrategist.com. We'd love to sort of talk, spend 45 minutes with you on a call, just learning about you, your business, what you're thinking about transition, to see if there's a way to help. We always say that if we don't know someone who could help, we know someone who will. There's a ton of amazing people in our circle, and we just want to see businesses transitioning and seeing those relationships stay together. So thank you, Steve, again for having us.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve, so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. You guys are the best, and we're very, very honored and pleased to be associated with you guys, and happy to point as many people as we can your way. Go out and make it a great day. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the You Don't Know What You Don't Know podcast. We invite you to visit www.youdon'tknowwhatyoudon'tknow.com and sign up to receive updates on upcoming episodes. You can also let us know if you'd like to be a guest or recommend a business owner to be interviewed. Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, where you can like, follow, share, and join our efforts. Thanks for listening. We hope you join us again.